Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, TheWriter, and this is a show where we sit here and I regale you with all the interesting tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened. So we return once more to the campaign of Kobold Mountains, and we have just returned to Chateau Tygar with the newly resurrected Beano. Heir to the House Tygar, 13 years old, obliterated by a green dragon and brought back to life by the Hierophant of the church across the mountains. So, needless to say, Chateau Tygar has gone into lockdown. Tiberius hires extra guards. You know, all the maids get looked over and the servants and stuff for weapons and things. There's somebody on the back wall watching for kobolds because the mountains are right up against the walls of Chateau Tygar and all these different things, while Beano, little lordling that he is, lays in bed pretty much comatose for a while. And again, they spoon-feed him soup for a long time, and they just kind of have to wait. So 2 or 3 days go by, our heroes recover their hit points, their magic, their everything. They do a little bit of shopping, but they come straight back, because this whole thing is hinging on Beano. They need him to come because he is blood of House Tygar, 13-year-old that he is, to go through the crypt of House Tygar to retrieve the black sword from one of the buried servants there. Now, supposedly, if you are blood of House Tygar, you can just touch the doors and everything will spring open and all the traps will undo themselves and you won't have any problems. So there's no shambling zombies in there or anything, but it is well protected as the family is quite large and prolific in the monies area. So, you know, like I said, 2, 3, 4 days go by, and our heroes are kind of hanging out in one of the banquet halls with Tiberius. You know, it's just kind of been a read a book, sit for a while, you know, buy some arrows, buy some potions, sit and do whatever small thing, you know, Landon stopped to shave, all the little things, just kind of hanging out in a common area until Beano emerges from the hallway. And of course Tiberius drops his book and he gets up and he runs to embrace his son. He's like, Beano, are you okay? You know, you were brought back from beyond the veil. Are you all right? You know, do you hurt anywhere? And all these different questions a parent would ask, and he goes, Father, don't worry, I'm absolutely fine. The Hierophant did a great job bringing me back. And he sounds completely different. He sounds calm and soothed, and like that bright innocent shine is gone from his eyes, because you know he died and you know probably went to heaven and then got wrenched out of heaven back to earth. So that was probably traumatic both ways. And he goes, son, are you all right? And he goes, yes, of course, don't worry. And he goes, your wristbands and your seal for your powers is gone. We might need to take you back to the Hierophant to have your powers resealed again so you don't go into fits. And he goes, Father, don't worry. I have a gift from heaven. And he says, you went to heaven? He goes, yes, of course. I was 13 at the time. And he goes, how old are you now? And he goes, well, time doesn't really exist in heaven. It's not something on your pocket watch, Father. And all the heroes look over, and we know, you know, a minute on earth is a day in hell. So a minute on earth is how long in heaven? We don't really know. Does it really matter? You know, how old is Beano's like spirit at this point compared to his body? There's no telling. But Beano, you know, leads his father over to like a series of like sofas, and everybody kind of gathers around so he can like sit and explain. He goes, Father, my powers won't give me fits anymore. I can see maybe 30 seconds into the future. When I please, I can turn it on and turn it off now. And as I grow up, I'll be able to see further and further. And when I become a man, I've been told I will have the full grasp of the potential of my powers. So when Beano becomes 18, he'll be able to see up to 2,000 years into the future. And they go, wow, you know, what does that do to a kid? Who told you that, by the way? God? Oh, okay. Fair enough. And so, rather than having him wear bracelets for the rest of his life or be sealed up by a Hierophant, Heaven has decided that Beano will grow into his powers rather than manifest them when he hit puberty, which is probably all the genes from Grandpa, the demon, like violently manifesting his powers like that. And then now Heaven steps in, now that he's been there, and kind of like evens it out. So he'll grow into those powers instead of freaking exploding with power and going into such awful fits and speaking in tongues and stuff. So he's like, you can see 30 seconds into the future. And he goes, and Beano goes, yes. And he goes, what number am I thinking of? And he says, you're thinking of hippos tap dancing on a piano. And he goes, oh, you're right. This, everybody laughs. He goes, what number am I thinking of? 7. Wow. And he tells his father, I learned all about Mom. And Tiberius goes, was your mother there? And he goes, no, but I learned all about her and where I come from. And, Tiberius kind of has that guilty look on his face because, Beano has discovered that he's like 1/4 demon, 1/4 sorcerer, 1/4 tiger man. He's got human blood in him, but not a lot. So he is a special snowflake, and it's going to get really, really weird as he gets older and his powers like grow into their fruition. But he says, Father, I learned all about Mom. I know what she looks like. I got to see bits and parts of her life. I don't know where she is now, but she's not dead. And Tiberius goes, she's not? And he goes, no, she's off-world. She's elsewhere in another plane of existence. And Tiberius goes, yeah, that sounds like her. She was not one to settle in one place for very long. Even with a place like Chateau Tygar, she often traveled and had her hands directly into the stores that the Tygar family line ran and different things like that. She would hardly ever sit still. She was a wanderer, but she wanted a proper home for her husband and her son. So it was an interesting conversation because Beano came back from freaking heaven. I imagine that's almost as bad as dying. You go from Earth to heaven and then Earth wants you back. It's almost as bad as dying again. But he comes back. Beano, he's not like innocent anymore. He doesn't have the hero worship for Landon the Knight anymore. He understands that Landon is just a man, that his father is not a god, that his mother left, that his parentage is a clusterfuck, let's face it, and that he is going to be somebody very important when he grows up, when he can see more than 30 seconds into the future. But he's back now, and physically, he's still 13, so Tiberius is going to have to raise him very carefully to make sure he doesn't grow up to be a psychopath or something weird like that, a quarter demon overlord. But the world is a horrible place. I just need to run it. I hope he doesn't become something like that. We'll have to see. But Tiberius says, then you already know what we're going to ask you. And he goes, yes, but it's rude to talk before people talk. It's like living in an echo chamber, Father. I can turn it on and off if I want, but if I sit here and think 30 seconds forward, then yes, I know you want me to eat, and you want me to bathe, and you want me to go to the crypt of House Tygar and help you recover the black sword to slay the green dragon that slayed me on the roadside. I understand. I do. And then, I say you can kind of see, like, not like veins in his temples, but you can kind of see the muscles in Beano's face, like when he's concentrating and when he's not. So he has to make like an effort to look forward into the future. And it's really hard, it is, you guys, to do like precognitive characters because your players will always like fuck with them. Like, yes, I've seen the future and blah, 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 and then they smack them or they do something weird. You're like, oh, you didn't see that coming, did you? Nah. Well, these were good enough role players that they didn't bullshit me, so this went over pretty well, actually. They were just glad to have Beano back. And so, they all sat down around the banquet table. It was kind of surreal. They saw this kid die. They saw him more than die. They saw him get obliterated. And he's sitting there plain as day. The maids, the servants talk. Of course they do. And the maids have shaking hands as they're putting on the baked potatoes and stuff like that, and spooning in the corn and laying down the meats for everybody. And Beano eats voraciously because brand new body, you need the fuel. And he's hitting those teenage years anyway. He's gonna eat everything in sight. So that's a healthy sign, at least. Everybody else is just kind of like watching him out of the corners of their eyes, like trying to see, is he gonna start floating away, or is he gonna do something really weird? Because he's not the Beano they knew when he died. Like I've said already, he doesn't worship Landon anymore. He understands that his parents were not gods; they were just caretakers and stuff like that. You get what I'm saying. I'm talking in circles, but it was very uneasy at the dinner table, eating with somebody who died a few days and then came back from heaven, completely different from before. He has a deeper understanding of the world than a 13-year-old boy should. So, he eats. Beano goes for a hot bath. He gets dressed. He does all these other things. He comes back in one of his little lord outfits that's so adorable. It's bright, the bright orange with the black trim and stuff like that. So he looks more Tygar like his dad. Yay! And I go, I have no idea how 13-year-old children act. So this is kind of a saving point for me, that he is ancient in his thoughts and young in his body. So he's going to be interesting when he grows up, but we'll get to that later, trust me. A bunch of you guys in the comments asked if we ever see Beano after Kobold Mountains, and the answer is yes. Yes, we do, but we'll get to that later. Now, once everybody's needs have been seen to, and Beano's had some time to rest, talk a bit more with his dad, learn what's happened, basically since he died, and the ritual to bring him back to life took 3 days, and then they scurried back across the mountains and all that stuff. So, he's going to help them get this sword, and then they're going to go dragon hunting. So Beano, he draws himself up, and he's like, okay, I'm ready, let's go. So they go out past the backyard towards one of the cliff faces, because again, Chateau Tygar is pressed up against the mountains, but a sheer stone wall prevents intruders onto the property. He's got a backyard wall, but beyond that there's more fields and stuff, and beyond that is the big double doors inlaid in the cliff walls that lead to the crypt of House Tygar. And so it's Tiberius and Sir Landon and the cleric and Michelle and I'm forgetting somebody. Tiberius, Landon. Anyway, they're all there. Tiberius too. But Beano kind of steps forward because, again, Tiberius married into the family, so Beano is the only one there that is blood of House Tygar. And he puts his hands, on the double doors, and they instantly just fling themselves open like they weigh nothing. They're big, thick, 6-inch thick stone doors that only open and close when a member of the family is there. So Beano has to lead into this dungeon-like setting. And if you'd like to see the floor layout of the crypt of House Tygar, it's actually on the D&D Stories Facebook. So if you'd like to see that dungeon map, it's absolutely fine. It's there. But again, it's not really a dungeon because there's no monsters in here, and so long as Beano is there with them, none of the traps go off, all the torches spring to life, all the doors open, all the everything. So really all they have to do is walk around. And, Tiberius doesn't know the layout of the place, and neither does Bino. It's like, Bino could look 30 seconds into the future to figure out the right way, but, what's the fun in that? It's the journey, not the destination. And hearing a 13-year-old lecture about the journey, not the destination, was certainly interesting. But they wander about. They see, like, the old matriarchs' coffins and the patriarchs next to them, the hall of servants that had no families that were honorably buried, those that died, knights in shining armor that didn't have anybody to go back to, who died in service, or who were honorably discharged and didn't have anywhere to be buried. There could be like 300 people in this crypt. It's massive. It's a sprawling place, and there's plenty of space left over for additions later. So, and I think it was Landon. Landon looks to see if Natishka has like a coffin sitting somewhere waiting for her, and sure enough, no. And they look to see if Tiberius has one, and yes, there is one. When Tiberius married into the family, marriage is forever in House Tygar, so his resting place has already been determined. And Tiberius has probably been in here like once or twice, and it's cold, it's clean, it's probably given a turnover once or twice a year, but otherwise it's kept sealed up because, again, only somebody blood of House Tygar can actually open the doors properly. So if there are like days of mourning, you have to go grab a family member. And as far as the location, Bino's the only one. So the House Tygar is probably prolific, like through the region. There's probably one here and there, but this particular house, Bino's the only one left. So whatever family structure there is, I'll let you figure that out. So Bino leads them along, like touching doors and lifting a torch here and there to open secret passageways, and there's riddles written in Draconic to make entire rooms rotate like they're on a lazy Susan, so you can see the proper statue and then grab the statue's wrist and pull it down to open that passage, and it's very fancy. But again, no kobolds have tunneled in here, no nothing wrong. It's some very basic riddles, they basically let Bino lead the way, because not only can he foresee what's happening, but he has every right to be there that they do. So it was a very strange dungeon crawl to let them read the plaques, understand the tenets of House Tygar, and there are three. Power, righteousness, and charity. Power, because they're super freaking rich and they can do what they want. Righteousness, to make sure they're always on the right side of the law. And charity, to lift up those that truly deserve help. And, when you're a bazillionaire or whatever it happens to be, yeah, you can make a hobby or you can make a family rule around helping others before you're considered a man or before you're marriage material or whatever it happens to be. And employing as many people as they do, not only in their house, but in the magic shops and the trade caravans and all around the place, the charity goes pretty darn far. So they learn about the three tenets. They learn about what god or gods House Tygar has favored in the past and the present, and who is buried where and why and what significance this statue has. And they look at carvings, and there's a small underground chapel where you could hold a funeral service, and there's an empty place for a coffin for whoever died. You can set the coffin up there while the preacher is talking about them, and you've got pews for everybody to sit, etc., etc. So it was a big setup. And they wander through until they get to the Hall of Shining Knights, the ones who either retired or died in service to House Tygar and didn't have somewhere else to be buried. One of which was a knight who was buried under a statue of himself. He was that beloved by House Tygar that he was like interred in a coffin, interred in the floor, and then a life-size statue of himself was put atop it so they would know what he looked like, and had the name and the birth and the ancient curled remains of flowers, whoever visited there last. And they go, okay, is that it there? The statue was holding a black, like, onyx with wrapped in glass kind of sword. And they go, that's not part of the statue. I bet that's probably it. And so Landon kind of kneels down, and Beano climbs up on his back so he's on his shoulders. He goes, okay, reach for it. And Beano reaches, and he has to, like, jiggle it a little bit and pull it free, and hands it down to Landon. And Landon's like, it's a +5 longsword that after you kill something, if you stab it again, then you will rip its soul out, and its soul will shatter like so much spun glass. It's made of onyx and glass, and it has like hardening spells all over it, so it won't like break like glass if you hit something. You can still kill things with it normally. It's just not, don't go stabbing any corpses if you don't really mean it. So Landon takes it and he wraps it in a cloth, and he puts it like in his bag so he doesn't have to worry too much about it. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned, let me back up a little. If you remember, our cleric, Jason, was very much against the idea of a soul-shattering sword, because it's like deep, dark necromancy, and he's like supposed to be a cleric of like light and mercy and love and healing, and he didn't even go into the crypt. Like, he stayed outside, and I even told him, I said, Jason, they could be in there for like an hour and a half. You're just going to sit at the table and do nothing. He goes, yeah, I'll be fine. And while they're discussing things, he hands me a secret note behind the DM screen. It's like, I'm going to wait outside to try and sunder the sword when they come out with it. And I go, oh God, here we go again. So, Jason was, he was the Dwarven Defender in Wicked Master, the one that tried to get the whole party killed. He was the DM during Shadow of the Northern Plains, who brought the revenge character and tried to kill everybody with like a souped up version of his old Dwarven Defender. He is the one that just tooth and nail, every single campaign, he tries to kill everybody, or he tries to PvP them, or he tries to, and we even set rules for this campaign from the very beginning. No PvP, no turning evil, no working against the party, Jason, because if you do, it's just going to fall apart again, and nobody's going to want to play with you because your stupid ass doesn't know how to play a team sport. Now, yes, you might say, oh, well, the cleric is against using such tactics because he's a great holy man. He doesn't want to use necromancy or dark magic to achieve his goals. Then you're no better than the evil. Well, they don't have a lot of other options, and he's willing to just, like, chop up the sword if he can just to be rid of it. And I was like, oh, here we go. The drama's going to start. But, it's a secret note, so I can't say anything. Gotta wait for it to happen so it can all unfold. So, Landon has Beano on his shoulders, and the halls are tall enough. They stop to read a few names, and then they go out the way they came with the sword in Landon's pack. And of course, as soon as they freaking come out, Jason the cleric jumps out of the bushes like, I challenge you to a duel! Ha! And everybody kind of stops and stares. What? And Tiberius is just kind of, what are you talking about? What bad luck do I have with clerics where they're always betraying me? Brittany the cleric, now Jason the cleric, and it's like, I just shouldn't hire clerics, should I? I should just stick to the Hierophants. And Tiberius is kind of like pinching his nose, like somewhat in embarrassment. And I go, well, Sir Landon, your honor, I guess, is being challenged by the cleric. your honor as a knight is on the line, I guess. It's like, what's keeping us from just kicking his ass? And Landon's like, my honor is better than just kicking his ass, so fine. And of course, Jason pulls out like this longsword that he had that was actually good for sundering things. So if he can get a good hit in, he could probably break this thing. And he points it at Landon, who still has Beano on his shoulders. And he's like, come on, come at me, bro, basically. It's like, give me a second. I've got a kid on my back. He has to kneel down and let Beano down. Beano says nothing. He just goes and stands next to his dad. Again, much older in the eyes than he was before. And Tiberius looks down at Beano, and Beano just kind of shrugs, like, yeah, this is a thing that's happening, Father. And Tiberius kind of folds his arms, and everybody else at the table kind of folds their arms and leans back so that this can happen, because Jason was the drama llama and wanted to attack his party again in another campaign, again. And just by then it was just the running joke. You can't play with Jason, he'll turn on you, or you can't play with Jason, he'll try to kill you, etc., etc. Carry some numbing agent for when Jason tries to backstab you, so you can just poke him and be done. But Sir Landon was a knight, and knights are good at dueling, so who the hell is this cleric kidding? And they might be roughly equal in health, and they might be roughly equal in armor, and the cleric might have healing magic, but once you get into melee, magic ain't a lot of help to you. So it goes about as well as you would expect. Landon pulls out his battle axe, and that was one thing that Jason didn't count on. He was sure that when he challenged Landon to a duel, he would pull the soul-shattering sword for a duel. And I was like, just, my mind was blown at that assumption. Like, when somebody duels you, it's kind of the point to not kill them. You thought he was going to pull, like, the black sword on your stupid ass. No. So, now it's the cleric with his regular sundering longsword versus the knight with his shield and his regular battle axe. And it goes about as well as you could say. Landon kicks his ass up and down the path, while the rest of the party, Beano and Tiberius, just kind of look on. Is like, who are you kidding, Jason? Is like, in terms of like one-on-one, the cleric, any magic user, once you're in melee, you cannot duel and expect to win under most circumstances. And I know people in the comments will argue me down, but just like in terms of this particular matchup, a healing cleric versus a knight, it's not going to work. You can sit there and heal all day if you can get your spells off, which you probably won't. But eventually he's going to overtake you, and overtake him he does. And Landon's like got him, head down, ass up, smoldering because he got his ass kicked so bad. And finally Tiberius has had enough. He's like, Sir Landon, arrest him. And of course, Landon takes out the manticles like he did with the fruit vendor and puts the cleric in cuffs because he's got like 1 hit point and he's not fighting anybody. And the cleric's like, on what charges, Lord Tiberius? And he goes, well, let's see. Assault with a deadly weapon, endangering a minor, pointing your sword or whatever at my son while he was on Landon's shoulders, disobeying your lord, any number of other things. You betrayed us. I can already tell. He picks up Jason's axe. He's like, this is a sundering weapon. I'm not stupid. You wanted to shatter the black sword before we could actually use it on the dragon. Why? What is your reasoning? And he goes, it's black necromancy. It should not be used by anyone. It doesn't belong in this world. He goes, do you have any better options? No, but we would have thought of something. Cleric, Jason, Tiberius kind of like steeples his hands. If you had gone to your local church and gone looking for a holy weapon, that would have been fine. Or if you had found some spell that would keep the dragon from breathing acid on us, or if you'd found a mass disenchantment curse that could have taken out Maelstrom's gem. That would have been fine. I would have listened to you and any of those things if you had like an alternative plan. But no, instead of coming up with your own plan, you decided to try and wreck ours. And for that, I arrest you. Landon, take him to jail. And Beano kind of like reaches up to hold his father's wrist so he doesn't like run and like backhand Jason for his stupidity. And yeah, there's some moral quandaries going on here because, again, the black sword is bad juju. There's no escaping it. It's an evil weapon that can only be wielded by knights of House Tygar and freaking destroy people's souls. Yes, exactly, but that's why it was buried. And Cleric decided he didn't like this plan and he was going to destroy it. I mean, what would have happened if he had actually done it? Like, your party would have whipped your ass a lot worse than you had now. You know, you probably wouldn't have lived to see sunset. But yeah, they take Jason to jail under Tiberius's word, and they send like a messenger ahead of time. You know, this man attacked us outside the freaking crypt of House Tygar with the intent of destroying a priceless artifact, and he threatened my son and my knight Aaron, or my knight Aaron's and my knight Landon had to defend us from his stupidity. You know, put him in jail. And, of course, they take him right away because Tiberius is pretty much in charge at Franz. And Jason's like, you know, well, what do I do now? And I go, you're in jail. You're kind of done at this point. You know, this is like the third or fourth campaign where you've tried to kill your party members, or you've tried to, like, work against the group, or you've had a problem with somebody. You're a problem player. Jason, I'm sick of your bullshit. Your cleric's in jail, and he's not coming out anytime soon. And our session kind of ended there. And we all went home with Michelle, our ranger. I was like, what are we going to do about this? He doesn't understand. Like, he doesn't get that you're not supposed... I mean, yes, PvP can happen. I've seen numerous times where there are drunken bar fights or fights over women or loot or what one man said about another man's wife. You know, they hash it out in character and then it's done. Jason has tried to hire assassins in other campaigns. He's thrown boss characters that are just souped up versions of his characters that died. He's tried to actively wreck campaigns and he turns against his party every single damn time, and we're fucking sick of it. So what do we do? You know, what do we even do about this? So we confer for a long time. We're like, Cleric's done. We're not bringing him back. Tiberius wouldn't trust him. Landon wouldn't let him near Beano. You know, he's more likely to get shot in the eye by Michelle than he would to knock on the door of House Tygar ever again. And I was like, okay, you know, the campaign's almost over, so do we bring in another character? What do we even do? I was like, well, why don't we have him bring in a new character, like lower level than you guys, as like a punishment, and like say that his cleric just can't come back. Like, you fell from grace and then you came back and then you were a douchebag again. He's done. So that's what we decided to do. Next session, Jason comes in with everybody's level 10, level 12 by then. So we made him like level 7, level 8. One for like breaking each rule that we set down. One level for each rule that we set down. Okay, you're level 7, everybody else is level 12. If you're going to start shit, you're going to die. And then, you know, that'll be freaking it. This is your last chance. Don't fuck up. But to replace the cleric, he brings in a level 7 dragon shaman, which I think is in like the player's handbook 2 or something like that. And they get breath weapons, they get auras that give buffs to people. They're good meleeers. They can do a little bit of healing. They're basically like clerics, but they don't have as many rules around their behaviors or alignments, but they're still alignment-based characters. And I was like, it's a weaker cleric with elemental damage. That's what it is. And I'm like, Jason, don't fuck it up, please. The campaign's almost over. If you're going to be a dick, you're not going to be welcome at my table anymore. I mean, after Shadow of the Northern Plains and that whole debacle, and after freaking Wicked Master trying to PvP with the Sorcerer constantly, you're on thin ice with your entire D&D group. Stop it, okay? Pride goeth before a fall, and you're falling fast. So I basically had to lecture this guy, play nice or don't play at all. And so the cleric goes to jail. In comes this dragon shaman. We didn't really even think of much of a reason. Basically, Tiberius hired another guy to fill in for the group because 4 is a lucky number, I guess. And let's see what happens next. I have my all my stuff. So yes, they have the black sword of House Tygar, and right before the duel started, Landon, seeing what was happening, handed the black sword off to Michelle, the ranger, just to be sure that it didn't fall into the cleric's hands. So Michelle has the sword on her. Landon's got as much stuff as he needs, and they decide, okay, it's time to go dragon hunting, because every time we freaking travel, we roll a 1 looking to get across the mountains. So if we try to go to Dakota Fields, chances are we'll just roll the 1 again, and this time we'll be ready for him and we can take him out once and for all. So they set out into Kobold Mountains looking for this dragon, and of course, while they're looking for him, they don't find him. So they're like, well, what do we do? And Tiberius and Bino, of course, get left behind. But, what do? We can't find him when we're looking for him. Do we start like a brush fire and hope the column of smoke that's 1,000 feet high will bring in the dragon? It's like, well, that's just as likely to bring in like 100 kobolds all at once. And that's no good. So what do we do? Do we even use this sword on kobolds? They're like, no, they're intelligent creatures, and they're being led by a tyrannical leader. If we could take out Maelstrom, that'd be fine. But the dragon is the number 1 target. So the sword doesn't come out until we see some green scales. They're like, okay, that's fine. So they sit, they go back to Frunz and they sit for a while, trying to just kind of sort things out. And about a week goes by. They stop in at local taverns. They ask around about kobold activity, if any trade caravans have been attacked, if there's any reports on Maelstrom or the Green Dragon itself. Nothing. And then things start to turn sour, because after X amount of time that Maelstrom and his forces have been left alone, they of course have had time to organize. And what do you do once you've consolidated power in a place and you've got all your soldiers together? Why, you move them somewhere to conquer something. So with the entire Kobold Mountains secure and nobody there killing their dragon over and over, they decide they're going to push out to one side or the other. And of course you flip the coin, east or west towards Frunz, and that's where the party is. So somebody somewhere looks out a window in time to see a kobold attack force, riding down on their little like goblin dogs and different things like that, riding down out of the foothills to attack Frunz directly. Now, Frunz is not a little village kind of place with straw-thatched roofs, so, one asshole with a torch is not going to take out the whole town, but there are enough kobold running around, and, the average citizen isn't even armed, much less able to defend themselves if they were. So a town siege starts over, much worse than Loggington, because there's nothing there to defend the place. other than, again, the local militia is there, and, what few people that can fight are in it for themselves, and there's no standing army in Frunz. It's just a big town. So, the king and his men are elsewhere at the capital city, or whatever you want to call that. A sudden Kobold invasion force is more than enough to bowl Frunz over and bring chaos to the streets and freaking set fire to whatever will burn. I mean, the streets are stone, and the buildings are too. It's a relatively nice place, but there's plenty of stuff they can knock down and plenty of innocent people to kill. So they're running through the streets, and right away our heroes notice that this is going on because the screams carry to Chateau Tygar, and they go, the town is on freaking fire, and straight away they notice the big shape of the green dragon coming down into the center of town to like smash up the marketplace and spray acid in all directions and knock over the town fountain and statue and all that stuff. He situates himself in the center of town to keep there from being any sort of rally point for any of the town's denizens. And anybody that gets close enough gets a face full of acid. So, sucks to be the people of Frunz. And so right away, Landon and Michelle and Jason, they jump up, and I'm still forgetting somebody. Landon, Michelle, Jason. Who's our fourth person? Oh, Meron. Sorry. God. He's been there in the background the whole time. Meron, the sorcerer. They jump up on horseback and they ride hard into town. Meron, of course, has Fireball at this point and can just like, boom, and send a dozen Kobold every which way. By then, he's realized that being a utility sorcerer when there are dragons about is not the smartest thing. So, of course, he took Lightning Bolt and he took Fireball and all the overpowered damaging spells that let you pick up a handful of D6s and then throw them all and then everything dies. But, they ride hard into town, and Landon is loving this because he's got the boots of the springing tiger and the riding gloves, so he's riding down Kobold as they go, swinging his sword back and forth as they go, and Michelle jumps off her horse and then scrambles up a rooftop just to, start shooting, unloading arrows. She carried, 90 arrows. I have no idea why. She might have had, multi-shot or spray shot or whatever it was, where you could take 5 arrows and just shoot them all to make sure something was dead, or shoot indiscriminately into a crowd. And by then we've kind of come to the final arena, if you will, the place where we know the last showdown is going to happen, because it's a big open space between burning buildings, and the dragon is there taking a drink out of the town fountain and using his tail to knock over the nearest house as he does so. And he's even bigger than before. He's gargantuan or colossal or whatever you want to call it. He's reached his ultimate mature form, what was intended the first time around when they were going to sacrifice Beano to grow him or bring him back to life, or whatever the circumstance was, that he was part of this ritual. And he was summoned too soon, so he was too small for his own liking. So perhaps the Kobold were casting true resurrection on this green dragon, and the ritual was interrupted, so he was much smaller than he was actually supposed to be. So every time they bring him back, they pump a little more power into that incomplete ritual, and he got bigger and bigger and bigger. So that kind of explained his size differences. Now he's a big, full-blown, acid dripping from his mouth, glowing green eyes, massive ripped up wings and the spiky tail and everything. And he turns when he sees them coming, and of course he first spots, Michelle up on the rooftop, and immediately does the cone breath, sprays acid all over her. And of course her freaking leather armor goes, and her leather pants goes, and her her cape, I think, went also in sheer acid damage. So she's standing on a rooftop with acid-resistant bra and panties, because that's exactly what she made. Standing there with like her bow and her quiver, and that's about it. And she's like, son of a bitch. And she starts shooting down at him as fast as she can, because dragons can only use their breath weapon, I think, like once every D4 rounds. So she took a bunch of acid damage, but she brunted most of it because she had such high damage reduction for acid breath. It's like, I've killed you like 4 times. I'm gonna do it again and make a skirt out of you. So she's standing up there in her underwear, shooting down at this thing, while the rest of our heroes ride into battle. And it goes about as well as you might think. Landon jumps into battle with the freaking shield and axe, and Meron, of course, has his fireballs at this point, so it's like shooting cannons out of the side of a ship. And our dragon shaman, just by being close to his friends, is able to use like aura buffs on them, so they're like on the sides of this thing swinging at him like it's a raid fight, and they get scattered like matchsticks by its tail, and they jump up and they start using like throwing axes and sprays them with acid again. Oh god. You know, Landon throws his shield aside before it melts his arms off, and they charge into battle again. And there are still kobold running about everywhere, so Jason actually has to turn and like use his short bow to keep the kobold out of the fight, while all the other 3 are shooting at him. And finally, they manage to freaking knock this thing down. And Landon's like, I pull the black sword. And I was like, Landon, you don't have the black sword. And he goes, what? And I go, look at your character sheet. And he looks at her. He's like, oh shit, I handed it off. Michelle's on the rooftop. And of course, Landon cups his hands over his mouth. Michelle, stab the dragon. You've got the black sword of House Tygar. And she goes, oh, you're right, I do. So she throws her bow aside and she pulls the black sword. It glints like liquid night in the setting sun. And she rushes along the rooftop, and she jumps off the rooftop, turning it down. And I was like, oh, that's a bad idea. And she's like, what? And she stabs it straight into the dragon. She pulls it back out, and its spirit like floats up out of its body, dragon-shaped soul, and bursts into 1,000 pieces like so many fireworks. And you can hear like the screams of the damned from inside the sword's blade, because it ripped out this dragon's soul, and it goes still at last. And right as she pulls the blade from it, the sword glows white hot, and it burns the fuck out of her hands immediately. And I go, Michelle, you're not a knight of House Tygar. You used the sword incorrectly. Your hands are burnt like cocktail weenies. And she goes, ah! And I go, put -2 to all your stats. And she goes, all of them? Really? Strength, dex, con? And I go, yes, charisma too, because your hands are burnt all to shit. And they go, why? Why did that happen? And I go, because the black sword of House Tygar, as I've said like 8 times, can only be wielded by a knight of House Tygar. And I point over at Landon, and I was like, that's a knight. You're a knight errant. You know, there's a big... He goes, that's bullshit. And I said it 8 or 10 times. You're the only one that was supposed to do that, because you're the only proper knight in this party. And they go, oh god, the rest of those were just titles. He actually had the class levels of knight. You know, if you took 1 level of knight, you'd be fine under the employ of House Tygar, but knight errant is not enough. And she goes, oh, my hands, oh gods. And the dragon is dead, though, and the sword, like, clatters off to one side before it turns completely dark again, and Landon's like, fucking sword, and runs up with his axe while it's laying, like, on the side of the fountain, and he puts his foot on the handle, and he raises his axe high, and he's like, sundering, and shatters it into 1,000 pieces. And they go, well, I thought you were going to put that back, and he's like, nope. So it will never again be used for good or for ill. They shattered it upon the ground at the Battle of France. So the Black Sword of House Tygar is no more. And they immediately run up to Michelle, whose hands, again, like I said, they're like cocktail weenies. They are burnt all to shit. And I go, you've got -2 on all your stats forever until you can see like greater restoration or like another trip to the Hierophant or something. And she goes, oh God, my hands. I can't even shoot a bow and arrow. My hands are all covered with blisters from wrist to fingertip. And who should wandered by just then with like a big group of kids, because I've got like 8 or 10 groups running all over the town. So of course this was incredibly convenient. One of the clerics of the local church runs by and sees, surrounded by kids because he's herding them like cats to get out of the battle. He sees that this person is like staring at their smoldering hands, and he stops for a second and is like, oh gods, what's happened? Oh, there's a dead dragon. What did you guys do? And they go, can you heal her hands? Can you bring her hands back? We're right in the middle of a battle. He's like, I guess, children, gather around, stay where I can see you. Greater restoration. And throws down this big healing spell, because blistering and body damage is like bleeding. As long as you recover like 1 hit point, it'll stop. You can stop bleeding with 1 hit point. You can repair bruising, blisters, like minor injuries like that with healing. Bone breaks and burns of this caliber, not so much, but he cast like, cure serious wounds, cure catastrophic wounds, whatever, to get her hands back the way they were. And I go, your hands still have like burn marks all over them, and you get like your strength and your con back and stuff like this, but like your dexterity is going to be down by a couple of points forever. And I think that was it. Like her dexterity, she had like kind of rubbery hands now because of such awful burns that she suffered at the wrath of this sword that was misused. I was like, 1 spell's not going to do it, but he doesn't have a bunch of spells prepared, so you'll at least be able to fight from this point on, but your stat reduction is permanent, unfortunately. And she's like, there's only so much that magic can do. She goes, oh, okay. So, of course, I got everything back except the stat that counts, the using bow and arrow, a dexterity weapon. And I go, yeah, pretty much. And she goes, okay, fine. So, and again, she's standing there, like, in her underwear. It's like, can we get you some pants or something? Like, that clothing store is like, the window's busted in. We'll grab her, like, a tunic or something. Because, no doubt Maelstrom is still in town, and having seen that the dragon has been slain again, he'll probably come to reclaim the body with his magic gemstone. So they lay in wait for Maelstrom to come along. Cleric, go, take the children with you. We have a score to settle with Maelstrom and all his shenanigans. This is going to be it. This is our last time. We really should have kept the sword. Shut up. So if this is Maelstrom's main attack force, kobolds can still be like level 1/2 or level 1/3. They can mow through kobold at this point. It's Maelstrom they have to stop, and pray they can get that gem from him or whatever it happens to be. And of course, emerging into the middle of town, leading an attack force of however many kobold, is Maelstrom himself, along with like a group of like kobold with class levels. They've got like capes and staffs and freaking like tiny chainmail on them, and like, oh, clerics with or kobolds with class levels. Let's fucking get them. So our heroes, it's like a slow motion, like the battle for Mordor is about to start. They all like, rah, for Beano, for House Tygar, for Franz, and they run straight into this mob of kobold, which again, 10th, 11th level party, it's like chunky salsa. Until they start running into the kobold with class levels, and they notice there's a sorcerer kobold among them that can throw lightning bolts. There's an archer kobold among them that can shoot 5 freaking arrows at the same time. And they go, is this basically our party but kobolds? And he goes, yeah, pretty much. They are roughly equivalent to you in power and skill, it seems, and the others were just cannon fodder. Maelstrom thinks that he can outlast you this time, and hopefully you will stay dead. And Maron's like they separate after a while. Like all the cannon fodder has been cut down, and now Kobold and like his super squad remain. So it's like 4 versus 5 at this point, and they stand there like staring each other down, and Maelstrom's like waving the gem like, yeah, you can kill them as many times as you want. We're still gonna get back up and keep fucking with you. And Maron is like, not on my watch. Fireball! And he throws all the D6s, and all the Kobold except for Maelstrom die. And like, well, damn, alright. So Maelstrom waves the gem, and the Kobold get back up. Oh, not on my watch! Fireball! Boom! All the Kobold except for Maelstrom die. So he waves the gem again. We do this like 4 or 5 times while our party is like going out to either side to try and flank him. And finally I'm like, Maron, how many of those fireballs do you got? And he's like, 10-ish. After a while, believe it or not, Maelstrom's gem runs out of power. He used up all the charges, or something happened. Like no matter what the magic item is or what it does have like a limit to how many times it can be used. Like magic wands have 50 charges. Maelstrom must have been abusing the crap out of this thing, because right in the middle of that battle, it ran out of charges. It lost its luster. So immediately Maron's like, lightning bolt, and just explodes Maelstrom on the spot. Like he was protected, but he's still a Kobold. So that 4 or 5 hit points he had under all that protection that he didn't have anymore went to waste under 8d6 or whatever it happened to be. He just blew apart, and that was the end of Maelstrom. And that was also the end of the Kobold campaign. So it was like, as soon as they realized that the dragon was dead and Maelstrom was dead, they all ran for the freaking hills. I was like, and that's like the end of that chapter. So they cut the head off the proverbial snake, and the rest of them just writhed and scattered. So the ones that were dead stayed dead. And Maelstrom ran up to the gem, and he dashed it across the rocks with his axe to shatter that as well. And I go, the day is yours, noble heroes. You did great and amazing work here today. And the campaign has come to an end. The trials of Kobold Mountains, the Kobold have no strong leader, they have no powerful dragon, they will go back underground from whence they came, probably not to bother anyone in such numbers ever again. And so Landon went on to be the noble knight of House Tygar, following his lord and Beano wherever they went. And Michelle the Ranger went on to keep hunting things and keep making really cool, sexy magic items out of them, from skinning them or taking the teeth or whatever. And Maron went on to learn more destruction magic and be able to sling the giant fireballs like so many sorcerers before him. And the dragon shaman wasn't really there long enough to have a backstory or anything, so he was just kind of there. But thusly does end the story of Kobold Mountains. And again, for those of you in the comments who wonder, will we ever see Lord Tiberius Tygar and Beano again? Oh yeah, we will. But as far as this campaign goes, that is the end of that story. So we will draw this campaign, this string of stories to a close, and I will see you guys on the next D&D stories. Keep gaming.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like button for me. If you want to keep up with channel updates, check me out on Facebook. And if you're feeling especially generous, be sure to visit my Patreon. Keep gaming!